I just wanted to reiterate that that's what uncontrolled intersections are. They're ones where they're not being controlled by traffic lights or signs. And then in those situations, you default to the right of way. Just like it says, uncontrolled intersections have no traffic lights or signs, and you must yield the right of way. Follow these steps, check for traffic on the left or right side. And you also need to pay attention to that it's not just other vehicles that you're paying attention to, right? You need to also look out for other road users, as it mentions, like pedestrians have the right of way if there's a pedestrian approaching that intersection. Even if it was your turn to go, you have to stop and let that pedestrian cross. Allow enough time and distance for you to stop. In chapter 3, we talked about stopping distance. So as you're approaching an uncontrolled intersection, you may not need to stop because it could be totally clear of any vehicles or pedestrians. However, it's always best to put yourself in a position where you are preparing to stop as you approach the intersection, just in case you do need to come to a stop and yield the right of way. So follow these rules at an intersection, and on page 58 of your guide and 59, it talks about those general right-of-way rules of which vehicle needs to yield to who. So here's that right-of-way in an illustration. There's vehicle A and vehicle B. In this situation, vehicle B would have the right-of-way if they showed up at the same time. And he would have the courtesy to proceed first, and car A would have the courtesy of letting him go first. Oh. So as you imagine, that's uncontrolled intersection. Controlled intersections are when they are controlled by traffic lights and traffic signs and things like that. So here is a video of how to manage controlled intersections. So in your controlled intersections, your controlled intersection is where there are traffic lights and signs. They can also, controlled intersections, it's very important to pay attention because they can also be the most dangerous intersections. Even though they're controlled by traffic lights, there's often a lot of things that could be going on in an intersection, especially as they get bigger. The larger ones are definitely have the greatest potential for vehicle collisions, especially as drivers are making left-hand turns or there's pedestrians. There's just a lot of things to go along with it. Also, when the light is changing from yellow to red, those are the greatest potential for collisions as well, because vehicles that are already trying to go through that intersection, they could either speed up and to try to make that light, or slow down and stop safely. But oftentimes you get people that are really trying to get through that light sometimes, and that's where you would want to be careful in clearing that intersection, but making sure that you're clearing it or crossing through that intersection only when it's safe to do so. So you saw there was a lot of instances in that video where they really advise to not enter that intersection until you're going to make your maneuver. So you never want to put yourself into a situation where you're stuck in the middle of that intersection. Especially, so even when you're coming to do a left-hand turn, sometimes you might need to creep out into the intersection a little bit just to make sure that you can see the full road where you're going to be turning into. But it's always just a good practice to not enter that intersection until you're ready to go through it and exit. So don't put yourself in a position where you're stuck in that intersection. The point of no return, it talked about that in the video. That means the greater the speed, the greater the stopping distance. We talked about that in chapter 3. So this is where that good judgment and understanding how much distance you need to stop your vehicle comes into play, because the point of no return means there's a certain point before you enter that intersection, depending on your vehicle, depending on the road conditions, depending on how fast you're going, where once you pass whatever point that is, you will not get, you're within that maximum amount of distance you need to stop, or that minimum amount of distance, sorry, to stop. So once you hit that minimum distance, and then you try to stop your vehicle, and if you don't prepare or stop soon enough, you're going to end up stopping in the intersection, or potentially sliding into the intersection, or sliding into another vehicle. So that's what the point of no return means. It means there's a certain point before you even get to that intersection where you need to start stopping. And once you get past that point, that means you're not going to give you haven't left yourself enough time to stop. And so what it means is, once you pass that point, you have to go through that intersection now. At that point, you do not have enough room to safely stop. So the best course of action is to move through that intersection. So that point of no return is really important when you're looking at traffic lights that are about to turn. So even before a traffic light turns yellow, you can look for different cues, like the crosswalk sign. If the crosswalk sign is turned from the little walking guy to the hand signal, you know that that light is about to change, because it's signaling to pedestrians that they should hurry up, they're running out of time. That can also signal to drivers that you're running out of time, the light is about to change. So those are definitely things you need to pay attention to get yourself in the best position to not end up in that intersection. So what is scanning? It talked about scanning a little bit, where you're always watching for potential hazards. And by rule of thumb, they say that drivers should be scanning every 45 seconds or a minute. Like every 45 seconds, your eye should not just be fixated on one single point in the road. You should always be moving your eyes around, checking mirrors, checking up ahead, looking at different signs that are coming up, things like that, looking for construction zones, all those sort of things. That involves scanning. It's you must always be scanning for hazards, for other vehicles, for pedestrians, for wildlife if you're on the highway. So you never want to be just fixated on one single spot. Like, you don't want to just be zoned in on the pavement on the road, because then your focus is only going to be on the road, and you're going to miss all the other things that could be happening around you and around your vehicle.